Now, with U.S. troops almost completely out after 20 years?
Well, Judy, I think the US has really messed it up in Afghanistan. You see, first of all, they tried to look for a military solution in Afghanistan when there never was one. And people like me who kept saying that there's no military solution, who know the history of Afghanistan, people like me were called anti-American. I was called Taliban Khan. For anyone who objected to this way of, I don't know what the objective was in Afghanistan, whether it was to have some nation building or democracy or liberate the women, whatever the cause was, the way they went about it was never going to be the solution. So when they finally decided that there is no military solution, unfortunately, the bargaining power of the Americans or the NATO forces had gone. When there were 150,000 NATO troops in Afghanistan, that was the time to go for a political solution. But once they had reduced the troops to barely 10,000, and then when they gave an exit date, the Taliban thought they had won. And so therefore it was very difficult for now to get them to compromise. It's very difficult to force them into a political solution. So because they think that, they won.
Well, whatever has happened in the past, right now, the Taliban are on the ascendancy. They are, in fact, saying President Ghani should step down from office right now. Do you think he should?
My view was that when President Ghani went for the presidential election, already the talks with Taliban had started. And Pakistan, I have to say, played a huge part in pressurizing the Taliban to talk to the Americans. So the Taliban were already talking to the Americans. And so I felt that President Ghani should not have gone for his election then. He should have waited. He should have made an inclusive sort of, the moment he held the elections, the Taliban became outsiders and he was the president. I felt that he should have delayed the election so that everyone could have been included in the electoral process. So automatically there would have been some political settlement. But once he became the president, he then wanted the Taliban to come and talk to him. Taliban did not refuse to talk to him. They were willing to talk to the Americans, to the other Afghan leaders, but they would not talk to President Ghani. And that's where the deadlock took place.
Well, whatever has happened in the past, as we said, the Taliban now is on the rise in Afghanistan. Is that a good outcome for Afghanistan?
See, the only good outcome for Afghanistan is that if there is a political settlement which is inclusive, so they form some sort of a government that includes all sorts of different factions there. And obviously Taliban part of that government. The worst situation in Afghanistan would be if there's a civil war and a protracted civil war. And from Pakistan's point of view, that is the worst case scenario, because we face two scenarios. One, a refugee problem. Already Pakistan is hosting over 3 million Afghan refugees. And what we fear is that a protracted civil war would mean more refugees. And our economic situation is not such that we can have another influx. Secondly, the worry is that the civil war will flow into Pakistan, because the Taliban are basically ethnic Pashtuns. Now, there are more Pashtuns on our side of the border than in Afghanistan. And so the worry is that if this goes on, the Pashtuns on our side will be drawn into it. So that also is the last thing we want.
And I do want to ask you about Pakistan. But before we leave Afghanistan, the United States has been asking your government for many years to help in the effort to fight the Taliban in Afghanistan. but the U.S., other organizations now say they have massive amounts of evidence that Pakistan has helped the Afghan Taliban with military, with intelligence, has helped them financially. How do you explain that this is a terrorist group operating in Afghanistan? How do you explain the support your government has given repeatedly over the years to the Afghan Taliban?
Judy, I find this extremely unfair. And so you should know a little bit of the history. Come 9/11, Pakistan had nothing to do with what happened, the terrorist act in New York. Pakistan, in the sense that Al-Qaeda was based in Afghanistan, there were no militant Taliban in Pakistan, no Pakistani was involved, and so when the Pakistani government decided to join the US's war on terror, this country was devastated by that. 70,000 Pakistanis died in that war, which we had nothing to do with. We had over $150 billion lost to the economy. Now, you know what happened in Pakistan? We had these, in the 80s, the militant groups created to fight the Soviets, funded by the Americans, trained by the Pakistan Army. When we joined the American war on terror, and these groups were trained to fight foreign occupation, which was the Soviets, but now when the Americans came, we told them that no, this is no longer jihad, it's terrorism. They turned against Pakistan. So at one point, Judy, we had 50 different militant groups attacking the Pakistan Army and the security forces. So we, as I said, lost 70,000 people. To be blamed for NATO and US not succeeding in Afghanistan, I find is extremely unfair.
It's not the only thing that's blamed, but it's an important thing that's blamed, in that the Afghan Taliban has always been able to have a safe haven next door in Pakistan. And again, the U.S. says it has mountains of evidence that your ISI, other elements of the Pakistan military, have helped the Taliban in Afghanistan over the years. Just in the last few days, there's a report 10,000 Pakistan fighters have crossed over the border to help the Taliban in this most recent fighting. So this is going on